I don't care if you think I'm Satan reincarnated.
Masks, no masks, everything, you can do all you want, but you still need help from the boss. We need help from the boss.
Welcome back to the Kings and Queens channel, where today we're going to do what we Christians have to do as our responsibility, and that is to look at our leader. Did you know that back in May 2021, something significant had happened? Biden ended up breaking a long-standing tradition and became the first president since 1952 to exclude the word God from his National Day of Prayer proclamation. There is now widespread grumblings that Biden is not, in fact, the right leader for us, and they're right. When it comes to leadership in the United States, the president's role stands out as the most prominent and influential. It's a position that demands genuine authenticity, but Joe Biden, the current president, has faced criticism for not quite hitting the mark. In his first year in office, he was marked by various challenges unbecoming of God's chosen leader. This included chaotic situations and fatalities at the southern border, deepening division amongst citizens, and alarming records of crime and inflation. We're sure Biden's trying his best, but we can agree on one thing. Being the leader of God's chosen people is not all about trying your best. Being the president of the most powerful country in the world is not just something that you can try your best at. If we truly wanted to understand what the people need from a leader chosen by God, we could take a look at the only book you'll ever need, the Bible. If you look at the journey of Joseph closely, we can appreciate the journey of a young boy who was betrayed and sold into slavery by his own brothers, only to rise as a prominent leader in the illustrious courts of Egypt. What sets him apart is not just his ascent to power, but his exceptional decision-making skills, which Biden clearly lacks.
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
As a high-ranking official in Pharaoh's court, Joseph's keen mind devised a brilliant plan during times of plenty. He wisely stored grain to prepare for the looming famine. This strategic decision not only saved Egypt from disaster, but also extended a helping hand to the surrounding regions. Joseph's story is a timeless reminder of the power of leadership and resilience, and it shows us that even amidst challenges and setbacks, we can always trust a leader's one-person strategic thinking to lead us to prosperity for the entire nation. So is Biden somebody that we actually trust? Well, if we take a look at all of the leaders that we know within the Bible, they have one quality that stands out the most, and that is self-awareness. They understand who they are at the deepest level, and having this requires the leader to believe in what they stand for, and especially why they stand for it. Biden, on the other hand, is not a leader that have all of those characteristics. God's chosen leader won't handle situations the way that he does. When conflict arises, he always seems to please everybody, giving in to avoid tension, and even if it means giving up what is truly important to America.
You are loved. You are heard. You are understood. And you belong.
Biden simply wants to please the loudest voices, which are usually the voices of agents of the world. How long can America survive being alienated from its core values? Well, let's talk about Biden and how he handles things. You see, he's had months where it seems that he's easily swayed by outside influences, especially on topics like immigration, energy, and foreign policies. Kind of makes you wonder how much his decisions are actually influenced by his own party members, right? And he's got a history of not being completely truthful. Should the leader of God's people lie to his followers? Remember when he claimed to have graduated at the top of his law class? Well, turns out that the records say something entirely different.
Biden also lied about his grades.
I think I probably have a much higher IQ than you do, I suspect. The first year in law school, I decided I didn't want to be in law school and ended up in the bottom 2/3 of my class, and then decided I wanted to stay, went back to law school, and in fact ended up in the top half of my class.
In fact, he graduated 76th in a law school class of 85 students.
More troubling is the deliberate lies about his son Hunter's laptop, dismissing it as just Russian disinformation when it potentially involves ties to the American adversaries and questionable financial dealings. Kind of makes you question, what's he really hiding?
This evidence raises troubling questions about whether President Biden is a national security risk and about whether he is compromised by foreign government.
Authentic leadership, the kind that truly inspires and captivates, calls for a blend of self-awareness, unwavering moral convictions, fair decision-making, and an open, transparent approach to relationships. Yet, when we take a closer look at Biden's track record, especially during his time in office, it becomes evident that he hasn't quite lived up to those expectations. And you know what that means? The American public isn't exactly thrilled about it. Whenever Joe Biden took over, they told us that grown-ups were back in charge. But looking at the first State of the Union, it's clear that the Biden administration, or at least the adults in this case, as they like to call themselves, has let us down in big ways. First, let's talk about the pandemic. Biden said that he'd end COVID without killing the economy, but that didn't quite work out so well. Instead, they pushed hard for vaccines and strict mask rules, even trying to force big businesses to mandate vaccines to their employees. But guess what? The Supreme Court said no way. And now most Americans have resigned to the idea that COVID-19 is here to stay, and they're eager to move forward with their lives. The ongoing border situation deserves attention too. While Americans were required to show vaccine proof for dining out, the country allowed millions of undocumented illegals to enter without any vaccination evidence or any documentation whatsoever. Border crossings went through the roof, and it wasn't just a one-time thing either. It's been going on for a while, and it seems like there's no end in sight. Initially, the surging border crossings were dismissed by Biden's allies in the media as a temporary issue. However, it's become apparent that the problem has extended well beyond a single season, as the U.S. Customs and Border Protection has reported nearly 154,000 migrant encounters just in January alone, double the previous year's numbers and quadruple those from the year before that. Ever since Biden took office, there's been a significant surge in illegal border crossings, with figures reaching the highest in decades. And under Biden's leadership, it's an open invitation for border crossings throughout the entire year. Oh, and don't forget about the parents. Apparently, they're the new villains, especially if they don't like the woke stuff that their kids are getting learned about in schools. It's like they want parents to shut up and let the schools do whatever they want. They even call them domestic terrorists. But you know what? Parents have had enough and are standing up for what they believe in.
If you have materials that you're providing where it says if you were born a white male, you were born an oppressor, you are abusing our children.
One speaker after another accused board members of introducing so-called critical race theory about whites, blacks, and U.S. history into the classroom.
Now, let's not forget about the economy either. Biden said that inflation would be just a little bit of a hiccup, but it turns out that it's a big burp. Biden's decision-making, or at least lack thereof, has become even more evident when we dive deep into the inflation crisis. Last July, Biden confidently claimed that the inflation would be a short-lived issue and that his administration had it all under control. But as we fast forward to the present, inflation is only rising and not receding. Americans now face higher prices on various fronts, from gas to groceries, and it's the policies of the Biden administration as well as his legislative allies that are exacerbating the situation. The colossal $5.5 trillion in COVID-19 spending was meant to stimulate demands for goods and services. However, it's also unintentionally restricted the labor market and supply by promoting welfare without work policies and unemployment benefits that discouraged people from even returning back to work. And Biden's big plans with all of these regulations and stuff, they're not making things any better. That's why it's important for us Christians to hold on to our faith as strong as possible. The damage from Biden's presidency might make the country a difficult place, and we've got to be stronger than the storm and continue to spread the message of love. Let's not forget Afghanistan, which was a total disaster. Biden's decision to pull out of there was one of the worst decisions in his presidency, and it was a major failure in American foreign policy, just like what happened in Saigon at the end of the Vietnam War. They promised everything would go smoothly and that Afghanistan would stay cool, but boy oh boy, it turned south real fast. The whole thing was a total intelligence flop, and before you knew it, the government in Afghanistan crumbled and the Taliban took over in the place in no time. In just a matter of months, Biden had undone everything that hardworking Americans had built for themselves, and everything went haywire.
I stand squarely behind my decision. After 20 years, I've learned the hard way that there was never a good time to withdraw U.S. forces.
When we Christians find ourselves under a leader who doesn't have the chosen heart of God, it is important to approach the situation with wisdom, prayer, and reliance on faith. While maintaining respect and honor for authority is one thing, us believers should focus on biblical values, engaging in constructive criticism, acting responsibly as engaged citizens, and trust in God's sovereign plan. By growing ourselves in their faith and embodying Christian-like principles, Christian can navigate challenging leadership scenarios while also taking positive change and making a difference in their communities. As long as we continue to believe in the Lord, the right leader will come for us.